Listen, Sean's going to call someone out on this podcast. He's about to do the biggest UFC crossover fight of all time. Dustin Poirier is going to be in his court.
Yeah, Jake Paul, come get this. Come catch these hands.
You're always saying, I am Big Zuu, and the UFC have asked me to fire 8 questions at some of the UFC's biggest and most famous fans. Our guest today hails from Chicago. He's an Emmy-nominated interviewer. He's eaten the Carolina Reaper. He's the king of YouTube with his show, Hot Ones. Yo, what you saying? I'm Big Zuu, and this is 8 questions with Sean Evans. It's about to get hot. Woo! Obviously, there's not a lot of people to clap. It's just me and you, but that's fine.
We got to bring the energy, Big Zuu. Thank you so much for having me.
I can see random hot sauce in the back on the shelf. What is that? Is that the chosen ones?
So, yeah, those are some of the sauces that we make, but they're like the cool versions of them. So we have like an artist rendition of Los Calientes Barbacoa, and we have this like thing that we did with Ford Mustang for the classics. So they're kind of like the super hyper limited edition hot sauces, the ones that we make. It's just kind of like the little trophy case that I keep around me.
So if you was a rapper, those are your plaques and
Those
Grammys.
are my plaques. Those are my plaques up on the wall over there, exactly.
What is your first UFC fight you remember watching?
I remember like in 2010 is when it kind of got introduced to me, and that would have been like the Brock Lesnar era. And I think the first fight that I ever saw would have been Chael Sonnen and Anderson Silva sometime around 2010. And it kind of started off, the thing with the UFC is just sort of like a great kind of get the boys together, order some pizza, get some beer, and just kind of have a Saturday night on the pay-per-view. And then over the last couple of years, it's just become sort of a weekly ritual. You know, if I don't have Saturday night plans, I'm getting that pay-per-view.
100%. What was it that you liked about that first fight that you saw? Was there anything interesting about the first card that you watched?
Well, what I like about all of these fights is that there's always a resolution. So I think like with any good sporting event, you know, you have a story that's involved. You have the traditions. You have the rivalries, you know. And in UFC, since it's just so visceral and primitive, it really is like a war. So you have these two guys that for weeks leading up to the fight have been yapping at each other, digging at each other, really setting up this thing where you feel like, you know, when you're watching that the stakes are so high. It's like a war. And then it'll all play out in a pretty efficient way. You know, like there's the pageantry and the lead up, but then when it's go time, you'll just have 3 rounds or 5 rounds. So it has such a quick resolution. And then there's always just in the most primitive sense, a winner and a loser. And then they stack the cards so that you get that sort of experience when you're sitting on the couch 5 times a night. So I think like once I started really feeling that and understanding it, watching more, being connected to more fighters, understanding more about it, you just fall in love with it, and then it takes a hold of you.
Who is your favorite UFC fighter of all time?
So, speaking of hot sauce and the UFC, Dustin Poirier, you know, sometimes at Hot Ones, there are people that they're just become part of the club. We just embrace them and you know, fall in love with them when we're doing the show. And then Dustin was actually just a big Hot Ones fan. And the way that, you know, like the Louisiana style came together is he was doing a Hot Ones challenge, and he came across the heartbeat sauce and loved the sauce and loved the bottle. And he'd been wanting to make a Louisiana style sauce forever, and it all kind of lined up for him. Then we shot the episode, so it kind of came full circle. And then just in being a Dustin fan from the sidelines for a long time, he's somebody that I've been betting on and winning a lot of money the last couple of years betting on Dustin Poirier. So on a personal level and just on a friendship level and just on a fan of the sport level, Dustin's my guy.
I love that. So you met him and you had to thank him for all the money that he's made you.
Yeah, got to pay him back.
Is he one of your favorite guests you've had on Hot Ones? How does he rank in your levels?
Yeah, I mean, for me, on an interview level, the hardest nut to crack is the athlete interview. To me, I personally find that, like in all of the different genres, the athlete interview is the hardest nut to crack because they already make their money throwing touchdowns or making 3-pointers or throwing down dunks or hitting home runs. The only thing that they can do is put their foot in their mouth in an interview and lose a sponsorship. Like there's no upside for them. In the entertainment game, showcasing your personality is a way to just keep your star brighter and brighter and brighter. But for an athlete, that's not necessarily the case. They're just trying to make it through this minefield without screwing up too bad, a little bit more reserved, probably don't see the reward on sort of a showcase your personality level. But I find that in interviewing UFC fighters, they're such great interviews because they have that sell my personality kind of thing built into what they do professionally. So Dustin, of course, one of my favorite interviews, but we've done a handful of fighters over the years, from Ronda Rousey to Kamaru Usman, Israel Adesanya did Truth or Dab, and every time it's an awesome episode and super positive experience. So the more UFC fighters we can get into the hot seat, the better, as far as I'm concerned.
Obviously, we spoke about it. You've had a lot of big guests on Hot Ones, and you've had UFC fighters on there. You know, you mentioned Kamaru Usman, and then Ronda Rousey. You had Poirier. You've done stuff with Israel. Obviously, they're massive names, but did they struggle with the heat? Was that something that you thought they wouldn't do? Because, you know, they deal with pain very well.
Yeah. And, you know, I noticed this a lot of times with athletes where they're really good at compartmentalizing the pain. You know, the things that they've been through, you know, what's having your mouth on fire with hot sauce. So I remember, I can kind of take it through, like Ronda Rousey was just country style, just cracking bones, taking it right off, cleaning every wing. And I remember she had this great quote about the spice level being above her preference, but not above her ability. And I love that quote. It's like such a Ronda Rousey quote. And then Israel Adesanya, Nigerian. So, like, he's been there before. Like, this spice game is nothing new to him. So he was just crushing wings. And I remember just liking, because he was kind of in his camp. And after the interview, he was just challenging his boys. Like, we just kept the cameras rolling. He just had all of his boys gathered around, eating wings right along with him. Dustin, Louisiana style, tough guy, you know, and he was handling the wings, some water, some milk, but otherwise making it through. But Kamaru Usman, who told me that he was nervous before the interview because he's been so just strict and religious about his diet over the last 6 years that he hadn't had like any spicy food or anything quite like that. So I remember he was just going through it and drinking ice water straight out of the pitcher. I love that episode because it's just such a humanizing experience to see even like the toughest guys get hobbled by hot sauce. You know, hot sauce, that's like true. The fight game, it'll always humble you.
My next question for you is, what is your favorite UFC fight that you've ever watched or attended?
So recently, and it was so much fun. I know it was like kind of a weird anticlimactic ending, but I was actually at this Poirier-McGregor 3 event in Vegas. And it was the first UFC event that I'd ever attended in person. And I felt like it was like the first sort of like post-lockdown cultural event. So everybody was just out and Vegas was just on fire. And it was an amazing time, like just one of the best weekends of my life. The stadium, it's just electric. I think just the testosterone that is just permeating throughout the whole stadium just makes the viewer experience of one of these events so crazy. And then, you know, it is kind of taken the place of those big MGM Grand boxing events of the 90s, you know, where like now you'll see all the celebrities are coming and sitting on the floor, and it's just like such a scene and so electric. And I remember, you know, just like the lights going off, everybody's sort of like watch lights going on. It's just like that, notorious. And then like, like the shattering of the glass and the lights go down and stuff. And it's just an incredible viewer experience. And I can't wait to get out to the next one.
Yeah, that's the thing. I've never been to a UFC fight. I've always been gassed to kind of want to go to one. But I guess seeing the fight end how it ended, was it kind of like anticlimactic, or was it something that did it add to the spectacle, like the kind of crazy ending, then that crazy interview of Conor on the floor, you know? How was it seeing all of that unravel in front of your eyes? Yeah,
I think so I remember because Conor went back, you know, because it was a pretty action-packed first round, you know, rolling around, like, throwing lots of strikes. Like I felt like, you know, that's how you come out of the gate for an event like this. You know, I was really excited to see how things were going to play out in the later rounds. It was just like, it felt good. And then Conor went back awkwardly And my buddy Rod, who I was at the fight with, I think he was the first person to call it because he was just immediately like, he just snapped his ankle, broken leg, just like before everybody. And then you hear everybody because it's just like hanging there like a piece of spaghetti, like, oh, like the whole crowd, like, oh. And then you did have that just wild post game, which was almost like a fight in itself. You know, it gives that same sort of primitive, visceral, just gets those juices flowing in the exact same way. You know, I guess on a personal level, like, you know, bet on Dustin, wanted Dustin to win. Dustin won. That's all good. Would probably like to see those guys just like bang it out a little bit more. Obviously, I think that's like what everybody wanted to see. But overall, it's like, you know, he got out of there somewhat unscathed. Probably, you know, is going to have his title fight next, and maybe there's like another McGregor event around the corner, and I'm just, you know, down to watch the rest of the ride wherever it goes.
Who dealt with the heat the worst out of all your guests, and why was it DJ Khaled?
It was absolutely DJ Khaled. That's legendary, and that was so early on. So it's kind of crazy to think that we've been doing this show now we're about to wrap 15 seasons, a couple hundred episodes. I remember maybe the fourth or fifth shoot that we ever did, DJ Khaled tapped out after the third wing. You know, like we've had people tap out once they tried to bomb. They're like, I'm over this. I can't do this anymore. And that makes sense to me. But the third wing, DJ Khaled tapped out, and it's become such a famous episode and such a part of the Hot Ones history that I'm forever waiting for somebody to tap out on the second wing or the first wing, you know, like really kind of beat that Khaled mark. But I'm sure, you know, we could do this show for another 6.5 years. I don't think anybody will ever hit that Khaled line.
I think what I love about it is the memes that come out. Obviously, there's the meme of Khaled reacting to the wing. But there has been some crazy memes that come from Hot Ones. You know, you got the Idris Elba one where he's going, the one with Shaq, but his eyes look absolutely mental. He's like, did you ever think that these like super international memes would come from your show? Like, did you ever feel like these kind of moments that would live on through past the show? Did you ever think that would happen?
No. You know, when we first started the show, we didn't even have really big dreams for it. You know, we kind of thought it would be this internet sideshow that would go on for a little while and fizzle out. We loved the idea and wanted to take a chance on it. But I think what ended up happening is the audience, it was so cult early on. Like the same people were showing up for every episode. And we kind of thought, all right, well, if we shoot an episode of the celebrity guest, when we put the episode up, their fans will flock to the video, and then the next celebrity, their fans will flock to the video, then the next celebrity, their fans will flock to the video. But we discovered early on, this is the same people showing up. You know, like they were watching it obsessed like Star Wars fans or something. So that really motivated us and pushed us to not only have this unique concept where we're interviewing celebrities over increasingly spicy wings to break them down over the course of the interview, but also when something went off in our heads that's like, you know, really, we need to dial this in and make this independent of the wings, a compelling, technically excellent interview show. And then if we can combine those things, then we'll have something really, really special. And it was the fans that were showing up that really motivated us to do that, because how are we going to keep raising the bar for them? Like, how are we going to keep scratching that itch that they're trying to scratch if it's just a wing challenge with famous people? So that's really what pushed us to do it. And then you see when it hits scale, when it breaks containment, when it gets big, you see these moments that are kind of like shooting stars in the constellation of pop culture. The Shaq face, the Paul Rudd meme, the Idris Elba one, which is probably my favorite. But me and Paul Rudd actually talked about it afterwards, and you can never predict when that'll happen. Like I asked him, I was like, I ran into him a couple months later, and I was like, dude, this Look at Us, who would have thought? And I'm like, did you think that was going to be a thing? And he goes, no, I didn't even remember it the second that I walked out of the studio. Like it was not like, oh, that's going to be the moment that gets huge. But people watch the show, they find something funny about it, or they find meaning in something, and then they elevate those moments. And in some cases, like the Paul Rudd one, make those moments bigger than the show itself. And I just think it's like such a privilege and an honor to be involved in something like that, where it becomes kind of a mantra or like rallying cry. I saw in graduation, like so many people would write like, look at us, who would have thought, not me, like on their caps and stuff. And that's really special to me, but I could have never, ever seen it coming.
I wanted to speak to you about your new collaboration, you two's, you know, you can get your own figurine. What is this whole collaboration?
You know, weird things happen to you, you know, like when the chicken wing talk show breaks containment, you know, from like Saturday Night Live sketches to Emmy nominations and now an action figure. So we have a Sean Evans action figure that we're doing with U2s. And if you want to pick one up, you can get one at shop.firstwefeast.com. Would go great on the shelf alongside the hot sauce plaques.
My next question for you is, if you was a fighter, a UFC fighter, what would your nickname be?
I mean, I think it's very easy. Just like the sauce boss works, you know, the sauce boss just kind of works. Like sometimes I think like when I was a kid and I was watching WWF, I thought about like, what kind of wrestler would I be? And like the idea that I always liked would be like a magician, you know, doing magic tricks and stuff. Like that would be my gimmick, is I'm like a magician doing magic tricks in the ring. I always thought that would be funny. But, you know, don't run from your brand. You know, don't run from your identity. If everybody knows you as the sauce guy, don't put your foot through a Picasso, you know. So I'll just ride with that, and I'd be the sauce boss.
Well, obviously, you know, you and Dustin are cool. Is there any chance you could ever get some UFC training and see you in the octagon?
You know, I try to, you know, because you do the show where you're eating fried chicken and hot sauce all the time. So I do take the fitness and my diet outside of the show seriously, especially over the last couple of years, and hitting the gym all the time. But you know what? Just doing the 9-10 lifts and then doing some cardio, that gets boring, you know, at a certain point. So I'd be down to go in the gym and check it out. And you've seen a lot of, you know, like comedians like Theo Vaughn or musicians like Wiz Khalifa. And then even now you see so many people from the YouTube and internet world going into the fight game. So there must be something intoxicating about it. So I'm definitely down to go in the gym and learn some things. And at the very least, you know, pick up a little thing here or there to be able to defend yourself should ever you need to defend yourself. And I'd be down. I haven't stepped in the gym yet, but I'm curious about it. And I'd be down if I'd be down for an open invite.
Listen, Sean's going to call someone out on this podcast. He's about to do the biggest UFC crossover fight of all time. Dustin Poirier is going to be in his corner.
Yeah, Jake Paul, come get this. Come catch these hands.
Question number 6 is, if you could call out anyone to have a fight with in history, who would it be?
Yeah, I think I'd go with Mark Zuckerberg. You know, like I think, you know, you wonder what did social media, what did it do to the world? Zuckerberg, positive influence, or just a pox on the whole, on society as a whole worldwide? You know, so maybe I'd like to test that out. And listen, if I'm running through my head, I haven't gotten into the gym yet, Zuu. You know, like there's not a lot of people that I can beat up, but I think I have like a coin flip shot at Mark Zuckerberg, so I'll go with Zuckerberg.
I love that. Take down Facebook.
Yeah.
With straight the source boss.
Rearrange your Facebook.
I mean, that is like the happiest trash talk we've ever had. We've got top middleweight contenders, Darren Till and Derek Brunson, fighting this weekend. Can you give us your thoughts on who you think would take that fight? Are you going with Till or Brunson?
Yeah, I mean, I don't, you know, I'm not like an analyst or whatever, and I always think that UFC is, I think, the biggest sort of an underdog can win any fight sport. You know, like I love college football, I love the NBA, I love baseball, but those sports I feel like are a little bit easier to predict when you have, somebody who everybody thinks is going to win and somebody who thinks like NBA finals or playoffs. You know, like I feel like all of these things kind of line up more or less how they should. But then UFC is just like a total free-for-all. You know, like I feel like if you just bet underdogs, you know, like that's a good way to end up in the green. But I think, seen Darren Till fight over the last couple of years at least 2 or 3 times. And if I'm not mistaken, he's lost at least 2 of them. So I like Derek Brunson to fight. I know that he's won a couple in a row. So just on that sort of anecdotal, just what I've seen, who's been winning and who's been losing and the fights that I've watched, I'm going to go with Brunson.
Our final question for you is who is the GOAT? So who is the GOAT in your industry, in the food interviewer space, and then who is the GOAT in UFC? Let's start with from your world.
I think there's an episode that we shot with Gordon Ramsay. He was the most requested guest ever in the history of the show. And that video right now for like a long form interview has something crazy, like 90 million views or something like that. And it just grows and grows and grows and grows every day. It's like a fever dream or something that came to life in a real way. And so I would have to say Gordon Ramsay is the king of Hot Ones Mountain. It's like a episode that's almost bigger than the rest of the show itself. And then, you can't – on a GOAT level in the UFC, I think you got to go Amanda Nunes. Like, she's just – every time she fights, dominates and looks really unstoppable. I remember that Cyborg fight from a couple of years ago. Like, I remember just Cyborg having this larger-than-life sort of coming over to UFC and is going to kill everybody. And she was just like everything, just landing and chop down that tree, no problem. And you see everybody else kind of afraid to fight her, not wanting to take that fight, or being like, I have the belt now, but you can have it back. You can have it back. I just don't want to fight this chick. So I think with her, it's hard to argue against that. But, we'll see like if John Jones, like he's kind of had this decade-long sort of invincible shield around him. But I think Amanda Nunes for just pound for pound GOAT.
Well, thank you, Mr. Sean Evans. This has been absolutely amazing. You can watch Sean forcing celebrities to eat hotter and hotter chicken wings on Hot Ones, which is the best show on YouTube. If you didn't know, it's airing every Thursday, 11 a.m. Eastern Time on the First We Feast YouTube channel. And fight fans, this weekend, we've got two top middleweight contenders, Darren Till versus Derek Brunson. It's an early start in the US on ESPN Plus and prime time in the UK on BT Sport. So do not miss it. Thank you for watching. I'm Big Zuu. I'll be back with another famous UFC fan very soon. Make sure you like and subscribe and check out all the previous episodes. Mr. Sean Evans, thank you so much.
Big Zuu, thank you very much for having me.
Cheers.